Professor Scarpa, you stated that human trafficking is a process, not a practice. Can you explain what this means, and how does this process differ for adults and children?
Yes, as I stated, I am using the definition contained in the United Nations Trafficking Protocol, which was adopted in the year 2000. And this definition contains three different elements for adults and two for children. The three elements for adults are the action, meaning the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or reception of victims. The use of one improper means, and there are many that are listed within the definition, including, for example, deception, abduction, fraud, the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, and then for the purpose of exploitation. So the third element is the fact that we are using a certain action, using an improper mean for the purpose of exploitation. In the case of children, as I said, the definition only comprises two elements. The action, so the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or reception, and then for the purpose of exploitation, which means that we do not need to demonstrate that an improper mean has been used to get the consent of the child to be exploited. So that element of using improper means is only needed in the case of adults.
How does the sponsorship system contribute to the human trafficking of migrant workers, and how did Jordan abolish the system?
Yes, as I said, in most of the countries of the Middle East adopts a sponsorship system, which means that to get into the country, migrant workers have to have an agreement with employers, and they can't change their employer. This is linking the status of the migrant worker to the one of the employer within the country. And if they try to run away, for example, then they are considered to be staying irregularly within the country and are deported. Which means that in this way it is easy for employers, for example, to exploit migrant workers. In cases, for example, of domestic workers, to take their passports and their visa, and then to lock them into houses, sometimes also taking their passports, so that they are having no way out of that. As I said, Jordan is the only country that has abolished this sponsorship system in the recent past, even if it seems that this has not made a great change in practice. So while the adoption of new laws that would obviously contribute to ending the phenomenon of human trafficking and fighting against human trafficking are important, there is also another element which is fundamental, which is then the implementation of those laws in practice.
You stated that the protection of victims is a key element. If states such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Syria do not guarantee the protection of victims, what does this mean for the implementation of the UN Trafficking Protocol?
Yes, as I said, these countries have adopted a reservation to two specific articles included in the UN Trafficking Protocol, and in particular related to the protection of victims. Actually, there is not so much a difference in this case between countries that have adopted a reservation in this specific case and countries that have not, because at the end of the day, the UNODC office adopted certain legislative guides a few years ago, in which they clarified that those specific measures actually are not binding, but are only recommendations for states. However, I think that, as I said before, while we have this 3Ps approach to human trafficking, so including prevention, prosecution, and protection, there is in the trafficking protocol an attention to focus specifically on prosecution. According to me, this will not help in the long run, which means that the 3Ps have to be equally considered to be relevant and fundamental. And in particular, the protection, let's say, P is fundamental. If we do not protect victims, then we're not going to be able to fight against traffickers. And countries like Italy, for example, which is at the forefront of this battle against human trafficking, having adopted in 1998, so even before the adoption of the Trafficking Protocol, a fundamental law fighting against human trafficking, demonstrates fighting against human trafficking can be obtained in a very good way if we help victims to get out of that exploitation. If we still consider them as irregular migrants, and we only try in certain cases when, for example, we deal with transnational human trafficking to push them out of our countries, then we are never going to be able to fight in an effective way against human trafficking. Thank you.